Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're taking a stack of information, really digging in, uh, pulling out those key nuggets, those surprising big
Yeah, the aha.
moments.
Exactly. And today, we're tackling something. Well, it's really timely. It's this whole shifting landscape of online information.
Trust comes into it big time.
And control, right. This struggle for narrative control online. It feels like it's everywhere.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our source material for today's deep dive, it's an audio recording. And it makes some pretty strong claims about how mainstream media is, well, reacting to online comments.
And it goes broader too, right? Into information control generally.
It does. So our mission, like always, is to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising facts.
Understand the different perspectives in there.
Yeah, exactly. Without us taking sides, of course.
Yeah.
Just laying out what the source presents.
And this source really does set a stage. It frames it as this core tension.
Tension between. Well, between this feeling, this perception of widespread censorship online,
Okay.
and what it calls a battle for narrative control. Who gets to tell the story?
Right.
And what's interesting or, fascinating is how the source connects technology, these new tools, with these bigger shifts in how much people trust the media.
Okay, so it dives right in, and the first thing the source really hones in on is Google.
Right, Google.
It talks about a new tool, describes it as a, quote, robo-tool.
A robo-tool.
Yeah, designed to flag what it calls hate speech online.
And this tool has a name.
It does. It's called Perspective.
Perspective. Huh.
And apparently it's being tested already by some big names.
Oh, yeah. Like who?
The source mentions the New York Times, The Guardian, The Economist.
Wow, okay. So major outlets.
Definitely.
So what's the stated goal for this perspective tool? According to the source, anyway.
Well, the idea is to help human reviewers.
Yeah.
To sort of streamline their work.
Make it faster.
Yeah, helping them filter, quote, abusive comments more quickly.
And how does it work, this algorithm?
It was trained, reportedly, on a huge data set, like hundreds of thousands of user comments.
Okay. Where did they get those comments?
From places like Wikipedia and the New York Times again. Comments that humans had already looked at and labeled.
Labeled as what?
As toxic. That's the term they use.
Toxic.
Yeah.
And
the system then gives comments a score based on how likely it thinks they are to be, toxic.
Or wasn't there another phrase?
Oh, right. Or likely to make someone leave a conversation.
Okay. Toxic, or likely to make someone leave.
But, the source immediately jumps on that. It raises a big question.
About the definition.
Exactly. It argues that defining toxic, or what makes someone leave a conversation, is, quote, completely vague.
Subjective.
It's totally subjective, yeah. The source makes the point that maybe someone leaves a conversation not because it's abusive, but maybe because they, the source says, get their ass whooped in a debate.
Huh. Okay. Or just don't like the argument.
Or get triggered, as the source puts it. They just don't want to respond.
Right.
So the way the source sees it, this tool could be a pretext, a way to censor comments based on these fuzzy subjective ideas.
A way to enforce a certain interpretation of what's acceptable.
Precisely.
And that leads right into the source's wider argument about why.
Why media sites are doing this, moderating or even just getting rid of comments.
Exactly. The source claims that data shows trust in traditional media is just plummeting.
Plummeting how badly?
To record lows, it says. Barely more trusted than Congress, apparently.
Oh, okay, that's low.
Which suggests, according to the source, that they're, quote, losing their ability to control the narrative.
And then it gets really interesting. It brings you, the reader, the person consuming news online, right into it.
How so?
It talks about studies.
Yeah.
Suggesting that when you read an article and then you read the comments below it, your brain doesn't just see the comments separately. It actually makes you reevaluate the article.
Reevaluate its credibility.
Yes. And the credibility of the publisher, too, based on those comments.
So the comments aren't just off to the side. They actively shape how you see the main content.
That's the implication. They're not an afterthought. They're fundamentally shaping trust.
And the source really hammers this point home, doesn't it? It claims the comments are, what was it, more important than the article.
Yeah, when it comes to judging trustworthiness, that's the claim.
And mentioned a specific study.
It did. It contends that this study directly says the less civil the tone, or the more toxic.
Which the source kind of equates with just a strong argument, right?
Right. It interprets toxic sometimes as just a forceful argument. Anyway, the study apparently says the more that happens, the more likely people are to believe the comments over the article itself.
Wow. Okay, so that's the reason, the source argues, why outlets want to control or just delete comment sections.
That's the core argument presented. It's about protecting the perceived credibility of the article.
And there was that example. Popular Science.
Oh, yeah. Pretty stark example. The source claims Popular Science, and it says many other sites too, completely got rid of their comment sections.
Even though it cost them traffic.
Yeah. The source claims it cost them, quote, 30% of their traffic in one go.
30%? That is a massive hit.
It really is.
So what reason did Popular Science give, according to the source?
Well, this is where it gets really pointed. The source claims they admitted they pulled the comments.
Yeah.
So they could, quote, preach a scientific doctrine on global warming without being challenged.
Wow. Okay. So direct admission of wanting to avoid debate on that topic.
That's what the source contends. Yeah. So there were just too many inconvenient people in the comments.
Inconvenient how?
Challenging what the source calls their global warming propaganda.
Right.
So instead of, fostering a debate,
It just shut it down.
a choice, as the source portrays it, was just to eliminate the comments entirely.
Which, again, feeds that narrative the source is building, that it's about controlling the message.
Especially given how powerful those comments supposedly are in shaping perception.
Exactly.
So, okay, comment sections are one area, one battlefront, maybe.
Right.
But the source says this isn't happening in isolation, right?
No, it argues that there's this broader trend. It talks about fake news censorship.
But it makes a distinction there, doesn't it? About what fake news means in this context.
It does. It's careful to say, for this argument, fake news isn't just disagreeing. It's like people literally creating news out of thin air to make money.
Gotcha. Not just opinions they don't like.
Right. But then it pivots to social media.
Ah, Facebook and Twitter territory.
Exactly. It points to Facebook allegedly admitting they censored their trending topics list.
Censored it how?
To, quote, filter out conservative viewpoints and opinions. That's the claim.
Okay. And Twitter?
Twitter gets mentioned for its policy to censor low-quality tweets.
Low quality? What does that even mean?
Well, that's the source's point again. It calls it a completely subjective definition.
Could mean anything.
Absolutely anything, yeah. And the source ties this partly to the politics of Twitter's, what was it called? The Trust and Safety Council.
Right. The group setting the rules.
The source characterizes that group as far left.
Uh-huh.
Which it suggests leads to content moderation having a specific kind of ideological filter.
Okay. And the source goes even further on that point, doesn't it? About tech generally.
It does. It makes this broader claim that any tech coming out of Silicon Valley to fight hate speech is inherently going to have a liberal bias baked in. It even says an authoritarian bias.
Baked right into the algorithms and tools themselves.
That's the assertion. And it gives an example that YouTuber Sargon of Akkad.
Right, I remember that name. Identifies as liberal, but critiques social justice movements.
That's the one. The source claims he was censored and banned from Twitter.
And that Twitter made up reasons for it.
Yeah, fabricated reasons is the phrase used in the source.
So the overall feeling from the source is pretty adversarial.
Oh, definitely. The sentiment presented is very much, they're coming after us.
Us, meaning people with dissenting opinions.
Yes, those challenging the mainstream narrative as the source sees it. And the reason for this censorship push, according to the source, is because those dissenting voices are, quote, kicking their butt on a level playing field, winning arguments fairly.
And the far left, as the source calls them, can't stand it.
That's the claim. It also mentions other tactics like financial attacks, other underhanded, insidious, nasty ways to target opponents.
So it paints a picture of quite an intense conflict. Given all that alleged censorship, does the source talk about fighting back, any pushback?
It does. It highlights James O'Keefe's work, for instance, Project Veritas.
What specifically?
Offering a $10,000 reward for evidence of media malfeasance, that kind of thing.
Right.
And it specifically mentions O'Keefe releasing a huge amount of audio, 119 hours of audio recordings from inside CNN.
Wow. How did they release it?
In a WikiLeaks dump style, the source says, at a website called cnnleaks.com.
And what's the thinking behind releasing raw audio like that? Just hours and hours of it.
Well, according to the source, the strategy is to make it impossible for the media to just dismiss it by claiming it was edited selectively.
To preempt the taken out of context argument.
Exactly. A tactic the source claims the media uses over and over again.
So this is presented as a way to expose what the source calls the real fake news.
Yes. And it ends with a call to action, basically, for people to get involved.
To prevent what?
To prevent communist Chinese-style net censorship from taking over the internet completely. Strong language.
Very strong language. Okay, so let's just quickly recap the main points from this deep dive.
Sure.
We talked about Google's perspective tool, this AI for flagging comments, and the source's concerns about its subjective definitions.
Right. Toxic and likely to make someone leave.
Then the claimed reasons why media outlets might be ditching comment sections, a big one being that study.
Yeah, the idea that comments heavily influence how people judge the credibility of the article and the publisher itself.
Making comments potentially more powerful than the article in some ways.
According to that interpretation, yes.
And then the broader claims of censorship, moving beyond comments to social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, allegedly filtering viewpoints.
With that popular science example used as a case study for wanting to control a specific narrative, like climate change.
Right. So connecting all these threads,
Yeah.
what's the bigger picture here? What questions does this raise?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, thinking about what the source laid out, it really does raise a fundamental question, doesn't it?
Which is,
What does all this mean for us? For how we consume information, how we engage with ideas that are different from our own.
yeah,
The source paints this picture where traditional trust is falling apart
right.
and technology is being used, allegedly, to manage or even control online conversations.
So it forces you to think critically.
Definitely. About, the whole nature of online discussion. What's shaping what you see? How much is tech? How much is human judgment?
And the motivations behind it all, at least as claimed by the source.
Exactly. The underlying reasons presented for why these shifts might be happening.
So thinking about you, the listener, navigating all this information that's just constantly flowing across your screen.
Yeah.
What does hearing about these reported trends mean? How might understanding these claims, these dynamics described in the source,
How might it change things?
change how you interpret online discussions, how you read the news itself? Maybe prompt you to look a bit deeper.
Beyond just the headlines or the main article.
Exactly. To really think about the whole information landscape you're engaging with. Something to ponder.